August 31st, 1998. 14-year-old Natasha Ryan walked out of her family's home in Rockhampton, Queensland, Australia, after another argument with her mother. It wasn't the first time she had run away, and no one believed it would be the last. Her family expected her to cool off, return home, and life would go back to normal. But this time, she never came back. As the hours turned into days, concern replaced frustration. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Detectives searched for answers, family members pleaded for information, and the people of Rockhampton began to fear that Natasha had become the latest victim of a dangerous predator stalking young women in their community. Then investigators made a shocking announcement. One of Australia's most notorious serial killers confessed to murdering Natasha Ryan. With no sign of the missing teenager and a confession that appeared to fit the investigation, police believed the mystery had finally been solved. Natasha's family was left with unimaginable grief. They accepted that she was gone, held a memorial in her honor, and tried to rebuild their lives. But nearly 5 years later, one anonymous message sent detectives to a modest apartment just minutes from Natasha's childhood home. What officers discovered inside that apartment would become one of the most astonishing twists in Australian criminal history. It would raise difficult questions about police investigations, false confessions, and how someone could disappear for years while living almost unnoticed. This is the real story of Natasha Ryan. Before we continue, take a moment to support Cold Case 247. If you enjoy real true crime documentaries based on actual investigations, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new case. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's uncover what really happened. Natasha Ryan was born into what many hoped would be a normal family life. But behind closed doors, things were far from peaceful. Her parents separated when she was still young, and the breakdown of the family placed enormous emotional pressure on her childhood. Friends and relatives later described Natasha as intelligent, but also rebellious and determined to make her own decisions. As she entered her teenage years, arguments at home became more frequent. She often clashed with her mother over rules, school, and the people she spent time with. On several occasions, Natasha packed a few belongings, left home without permission, and stayed away for a short time before eventually returning. Each incident reinforced the belief that, no matter how upset she became, she would always find her way back. But Natasha was keeping a secret from almost everyone around her. At just 14 years old, she had started a relationship with a man named Scott Black, who was 22 years old. The relationship was hidden from her family because they knew it would never be accepted. The age difference alone raised serious concerns, and both understood the consequences if anyone discovered they were together. On the evening of August 31st, 1998, another disagreement erupted at home. To Natasha, it felt no different from the arguments that had happened before. She walked out of the house believing she had somewhere safe to go. When she failed to return, her mother contacted police and reported her missing. At first, investigators treated the case as another runaway report. Natasha had disappeared before, so there was little reason to believe this time would be different. Officers checked places where she was known to spend time, spoke with friends, and waited for the phone call everyone expected. It never came. Instead, every passing day made the situation more alarming. Natasha seemed to have vanished completely. Her friends hadn't seen her. Her relatives hadn't heard from her. No one had any idea where she had gone. As weeks turned into months, detectives could no longer treat the case as a routine disappearance. They began exploring darker possibilities, including the frightening chance that Natasha had met with foul play. Then another young woman disappeared from the same area. Soon after, another. The similarities between the cases became impossible to ignore, and investigators feared they were dealing with something far more dangerous than a series of unrelated disappearances. The investigation was about to take a dramatic turn. The breakthrough came in April 1999. Another young woman disappeared from the Rockhampton area. Unlike the earlier cases, this time investigators had something they had desperately needed for months, a witness who had seen the suspect. That lead pointed detectives to a man named Leonard Fraser. Fraser already had a violent criminal history. As investigators looked deeper into his background, they became convinced they were dealing with a dangerous offender capable of far more than anyone had imagined. After his arrest, police linked him to multiple missing women whose disappearances had terrified the community. But there was one problem. There was still no trace of Natasha Ryan. No body. No physical evidence proving she had been killed. Only unanswered questions. As Fraser remained behind bars awaiting trial, life inside prison quickly became dangerous for him. Other inmates knew who he was and what he was accused of. Fearing for his own safety, Fraser wanted to be moved into protective custody. Investigators recognized an opportunity. According to court records and police reports, Fraser began confessing to a series of murders. Among the names he claimed responsibility for was 14-year-old Natasha Ryan. For detectives, the confession appeared to explain everything. Natasha had disappeared without warning. She had never contacted her family. Years had passed without a single confirmed sighting. Combined with Fraser's confession, many investigators believed the mystery had finally been solved. The news devastated Natasha's family. Although there was no body to bury, they believed they had finally learned the truth about what had happened to their daughter. A memorial service was held. Friends gathered to remember the smiling teenager they believed they would never see again. While her loved ones mourned, prosecutors prepared to use Fraser's confession as part of their murder case. Across Australia, many believed justice was finally within reach. But there was one person who knew the confession was completely false. Natasha Ryan. She was alive. From the very night she disappeared, Natasha had been living with her secret boyfriend, Scott Black. For years, almost no one knew she was there. The apartment became her entire world. She rarely stepped outside during daylight. The curtains stayed closed. If visitors came to the apartment, Natasha hid in a bedroom closet and waited silently until they left. Even neighbors who lived only a few meters away had no idea a missing teenager was secretly living in the same building. As the years passed, Natasha and Scott moved between different homes, always trying to avoid attention. Ironically, one of those homes was only a few minutes away from the house where Natasha had disappeared. While police searched across Australia. While investigators believed she had been murdered. While her family mourned her death. Natasha was living in silence, watching the world believe a story she knew wasn't true. Then Leonard Fraser's murder trial began. Natasha followed the news. She learned that a man she had never met was standing trial for her murder. She considered coming forward. But after disappearing for nearly 5 years, she believed the truth would destroy too many lives. So she remained hidden. Days later, everything changed. Someone sent police an anonymous letter. The message was short. It claimed Natasha Ryan was alive. It even included a telephone number. At first, detectives were skeptical. Over the years, they had received countless false tips from people claiming to know where Natasha was. Most led nowhere. But investigators checked the phone number anyway. It was registered to an apartment in the suburb of Frenchville. Detectives decided they couldn't ignore the possibility, no matter how unlikely it seemed. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this investigation, take a second to support Cold Case 247. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and tell us in the comments what you think. At this point in the investigation, would you have believed the anonymous letter, or would you have dismissed it as another false lead? Now, let's see what detectives found. In April 2003, police arrived at the apartment. Scott Black answered the door. The officers explained why they were there and asked one simple question. Was Natasha Ryan inside? Scott calmly told them no. For a moment, it appeared the anonymous letter had been another dead end. But the detectives weren't convinced. They requested permission to search the apartment. As officers moved from room to room, nothing seemed unusual. Then one detective approached a bedroom. He noticed a wardrobe. He opened the door. Standing inside was Natasha Ryan. Alive. The teenager Australia believed had been murdered nearly 5 years earlier had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. The discovery sent shockwaves through Australia. Within hours, news crews gathered outside the apartment. Reporters struggled to understand how one of the country's most famous missing teenagers had been found alive after nearly 5 years. For Natasha's family, the emotions were overwhelming. They had spent years believing their daughter had been murdered. They had mourned her, held a memorial service, and tried to accept a future without her. Now they were being told she had been alive the entire time. Investigators immediately questioned Natasha about everything that had happened since the day she disappeared. Her answers changed the case overnight. Natasha told detectives she had never met Leonard Fraser. She had never been abducted. She had never seen the man who had confessed to killing her. She explained that after leaving home in 1998, she had gone directly to Scott Black's home. From that day forward, she remained hidden, rarely leaving the house and avoiding anyone who might recognize her. Her statement created an unexpected problem for prosecutors. Fraser had admitted to murdering Natasha, but Natasha was standing in court very much alive. Defense lawyers immediately questioned the reliability of his confession. If he had lied about one victim, could he have lied about the others? It was a question that threatened to undermine one of Australia's most important murder trials. Fortunately for investigators, Fraser's case did not rely on his confession alone. Detectives had spent years gathering forensic evidence, witness statements, and other independent evidence connecting him to the murders of several young women. Although the confession about Natasha proved to be false, the remaining evidence convinced the court that Fraser was responsible for multiple murders. He was convicted and sentenced to indefinite imprisonment, ensuring he would remain behind bars. But the investigation didn't end there. Authorities now had to determine whether Natasha and Scott had committed any crimes during the years she remained hidden. Police had dedicated thousands of hours searching for Natasha. Search teams had followed countless leads. Investigators had interviewed witnesses across the region. Public resources had been committed to finding a girl everyone believed was missing. Because Natasha knowingly remained hidden while police searched for her, she was fined for causing a false police investigation. Scott Black also faced serious consequences. Investigators concluded that he had repeatedly lied to police about Natasha's whereabouts. For those actions, he was convicted and sentenced to a year in prison. Public reaction was divided. Some people believed Natasha was simply a frightened teenager who made one terrible decision and watched it spiral out of control. Others felt sympathy for her parents, who had spent years believing their daughter had been murdered while she lived only minutes away from home. The case sparked nationwide debate about runaway teenagers, police investigations, and false confessions. Years later, Natasha and Scott remained together. They eventually married and started a family, choosing to live a far more private life than the extraordinary case that had made headlines around the world. To this day, the disappearance of Natasha Ryan remains one of Australia's most remarkable missing person investigations. What began as a routine runaway report became a suspected serial murder. A confessed homicide turned out never to have happened. And a young girl believed to be dead was eventually found alive, hiding in a bedroom closet just minutes from the home she had left years earlier. The case also serves as a reminder that even a confession is not always the truth. Investigators must rely on evidence, not just words. In this case, one false confession nearly changed the course of a major criminal trial. Without careful police work and independent evidence, justice could have taken a very different path. Thank you for watching this investigation. If you enjoy professionally researched true crime documentaries based on real cases, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Cold Case 247, and turn on notifications so you never miss another investigation. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What surprised you most about Natasha Ryan's case? And which real case would you like us to investigate next? Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and thank you for watching Cold Case 247.